we're going to get started. We have some amazing conversations today, and for those of you who were just in the main session, wasn't that fantastic? Oh my gosh. I told Kate, I said, every year you top yourselves as it pertains to BizTimes and the annual event. So I don't know what's happening next year because I thought last year was incredible. And here we go with today. So with that being said, one of the fun parts of what we do here at this offsite is we have some executives from multiple lines of business talking about specific topics that are important to each one of us as leaders. And I'm honored to announce that we have Beth Ridley, who will be our moderator and facilitator for today's panel discussion. So I would like to hand it off to Beth, and I hope you all enjoy absolutely everything that's shared today, and you take lots of copious notes, because I guarantee you, if you're like me and you're a note taker, you will remember a moment and you're like, wait a minute, I heard this back in August of 2025, and this is how, or 2025, and this is how those ladies work things out. This is how they move beyond the circumstance into empowered situations, and I hope that is your story today. So I'm going to hand it off to Beth.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Nina. Hi, everybody. Good morning. So glad that we've got such a packed room for our panel. I think this panel is going to be a perfect complement to everything that we talked about on the main stage. So the title of this session is Courage to Lead Differently, Redefining Leadership for a New Era. And my main takeaway from the main room conversation is that, boy, is this a new era. There is a lot going on, a lot of challenges, opportunities, of course, but there's just like a lot to navigate. So the keynote talked about perma-crisis, which I think is a new term for me, but kind of sums up everything that's going on. AI is entering the workforce, Gen Z is entering the workforce, and all that they bring. A lot of change, where the workplace is more diverse than ever, but it can also feel more divisive than ever. Burnout is on the rise, loneliness, incivility, but at the same time, we're starting to normalize mental health. So how do you lead effectively in all of this? Because it is a new era. And I think the one thing that we can agree on is the leadership style that might have worked in the past, that was successful to get us here, is probably not going to be the same leadership style that we need to navigate in this new era. So if you are a leader in setting the tone, that means you're going to have to be bold and kind of stand alone sometimes, go against the tradition. And it sounds easy, but I think it can be really hard and really scary. So I'm excited to hear from our wonderful panelists on what does leading in the new era mean for them, and practically speaking, how do they do it? So they're going to tell us about how they're redefining leadership on their own terms, how they're embracing more values-driven leadership, and leading confidently through change and uncertainty. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. So I'm going to start on my far left. Sarah Maio is most recently, she served as the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Wisconsin Center District, where she oversaw marketing and communications efforts for Baird Center, Panther Arena, Mueller High Life Theater, and the Wisconsin Center District at large. Hello, Sarah.
Good morning.
In the middle, we have Lori Richards, CEO of Mueller Communications, a full-service communications agency in downtown Milwaukee. In her role, Lori balances working on the business with working in the business and focuses a lot of her time on cultivating and growing a talented team and new business for the firm. Thank you for joining us, Lori. And Lacey Sadoff is next to me. She is fourth-generation owner and president of Badger Liquor, Wisconsin's largest wine and spirits distributor. As a champion of women and diversity in the workplace, Lacey was a founding member of the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America.
Okay, my only ask after this is that we get a quick group photo.
Oh yeah. I always forget about it. So thank you for being here. kept the bios intentionally short because I really want to get into the questions and the conversation, because I think as you hear their stories, you'll get a much better appreciation for the phenomenal women that these leaders are, not just in their professional lives. I have the pleasure of knowing you personally and in your personal lives and the force that they are in the community as well. So I think we'll talk about leadership in the broad sense, not just at work, but what it means to lead in our full lives. Fair enough. Okay. My first question, I'm actually going to ask each of you, and we'll just sort of like go down the row here and start with you, Sarah, but it's going to be part of the introduction as well to kick off the conversation. So my question that I'd like for each of you to speak to is, when you hear this phrase, leading differently, what does that really mean to you right now? And how has that definition of leadership evolved for you over your career? And we had a chance to do a little bit of pre-work here, so I'm gonna like plant the seed a little bit. Sarah, for you, I know a big theme around this is around empathy, but I'll let you fill in the blank.
Totally. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here and see all these familiar faces and unfamiliar faces. Welcome. Leading differently, so I, as Beth mentioned in the intro, most recently at the WCD, and I took a big, bold breath and a big, bold step 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I left that role that I had been in for almost a decade, and I walked away with nothing waiting for me. So I think leading differently for me does have that empathetic leadership value. That is a huge value for me, and the reason it's a value for me is because, to me, being empathetic means giving yourself the opportunity to build a different kind of relationship and a different kind of bridge, not only with your staff, with your colleagues, with your board, with your family, with your friends. And ultimately, the lesson that I started to learn kind of the hard way was even with yourself. We've spent, I think, especially as women, so much time since COVID saying, like, give yourself grace. And I found myself saying that to a lot of people and really being so smart about the advice that I was offering to others, and realized that if I did not start to listen to myself a little bit and give myself some grace and a chance to take the very scary step to stop, I was going to cook out real fast. Mm-hmm. And so leading with empathy to me does not mean being a pushover. Being empathetic and being bulldozed are not synonyms. Being empathetic means building a relationship with people where they can trust you and you can trust them. And the way to do that is through vulnerability, and that is scary. But that is how you get people to perform at their highest level and to be able to have the confidence to recognize when they need to go, I need help. And then you don't let things dissolve into chaos, right? Tell me ugly early. Tell me now, not before it turns into a huge disaster. So anyway, I know we'll talk more about this later, but yes, empathy to me is my core value, and it is how I want to lead differently, not only for teams that I lead, but also model it for myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you're here because, most people think, well, I've stepped away from my role. Can I really come on a panel and talk about leadership? But the fact is, leadership extends to all aspects of our lives. And you're pausing and regrouping and rethinking of how you're going to lead. And so I love the fact that we're bringing this perspective in, because it's not only about leading in the traditional sense at work in a formal team, but you're actually in that transition to share with us of like, what does leadership really mean and how can we manifest it in all aspects of our life. So we're going to circle back more on that.
Great.
Okay, Lori, I love chatting with you about the same question. What does leading differently mean to you? How has it evolved? And a key theme for you is around positive intent.
That's right. Thanks, Beth. And good morning. It's great to see you all. So one of the really key pieces of context as I share a bit more about my leadership style and my career journey is that I have been in the same place for nearly 25 years. So I literally started as an intern, and I have grown into the CEO role at the same company, which is a pretty rare kind of leadership and growth journey in today's day and age, for sure. But one of the real values of that journey was I, even as an intern, had the ability to kind of sit back and observe around me and say, gosh, I like that. That feels right. Or, ooh, if I had a chance to do it differently, I think I would do it this way. So I always sort of learned and observed and soaked it all in with the thought, and then had some early conversations as part of my role about I have an opportunity for succession, I have an opportunity for leadership, and essentially I saw that as I have an opportunity to create my dream job if I stick it out and I get through the hard times and I take advantage of these leadership opportunities that I have. So in these observations and as part of this journey, and also, I'm working in communications and PR, kind of especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, very much still sort of old boys network. So I noticed that a lot of how management worked at the agency and how reports were structured, for example, at the agency, they really came from a place of sort of negative intent. We really need to manage people because otherwise they're going to be lazy. They're going to try to do as little work as possible and still collect their paycheck. And as I thought about that, and I sort of compared it against how I worked, I thought, that's not where I'm coming from. I want to meet my goals. I want to exceed my goals. I want to do the best work possible. I want happy managers. I want happy clients, right? This is where I'm coming from. And when we finally had an opportunity and in a position of leadership to really flip the script, it made so much more sense. And I think retention has gone up. The quality of team members that we've been able to attract and retain at the agency has gone up. Because I will tell you now, being in a leadership position and doing reviews, performance reviews for years, people just want to make you happy. If you hire the right people, they want to give you their best. They want to do great work. And ultimately, they feel successful when the others around them are successful. We often joke that our hardest job at this point in time in being managers is to get people to be gentler to themselves. It's not to say, did you see the number? You missed it. They know, right? So really by flipping the script and leading from a place of positive intent has made all of the difference in being able to motivate our staff or validate our staff in that what they're doing is great and getting them all to really continue performing at a high level.
Definitely seeing a theme here around being gentle to ourselves and to others. Lori, I know we're going to talk more, but I really do have to ask, it feels more of a female innate quality, not to oversimplify. How does that type of leadership resonate with your male colleagues and counterparts?
It may feel female because I think maybe it's the nurturer in us, but my business partner is a male, and it's not as if I brought him along to this position. He was there all along. So I think, I don't know, maybe it's sort of, it's along with the breaking down of some of these masculine stereotypes, but I do feel like it's starting to really be much more embraced as workplace culture. I also feel like, sometimes it's really rooted in confidence. We're not over managing people because we're threatened about our own positions, but really when we feel confident about what we're doing and our place in the company, we manage with more empathy. We manage from a place of positive intent.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's key to break down these stereotypes because after all, men are human too, right? We all need sort of the same human needs. Okay, so Lacey, then the same question for you. And you really leaned into this theme around curiosity. So I'm curious, can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure, I can. So I use the word curiosity quite a bit, both in my leadership life, at work and also personally, and it's evolved over time, and I'll kind of talk to you about the lack of curiosity I had in the beginning and how it's developed, and then I'll tell you an anecdotal story of real life experience, how it helped me out. So first, I was curious for me individually. I knew I had so much to learn. I was apprehensive about how much I actually had to learn. I came into my family's business unplanned. My life plan was not to join the family business about almost 20 years ago, and I had had a handful of years out of college doing something totally different, and so I didn't know that much, but I felt like I knew enough to be like, I can do this, whatever this is going to end up being. And I was the first female family member. I was the first female manager. I was it's a male-driven industry, liquor and wine. Less so now than it was 20 years ago, but it was a different place. And although I was curious, I felt like I had more to prove than the luxury of being able to ask the questions, because I felt like if I asked too many questions, it would expose me. Because I'm an imposter. I don't belong here. Sure, my last name is what it is, but I don't want people to think that. I want to prove it for myself. So in other areas, I felt like I did know enough and didn't have the time to ask so many questions and wade through the responses and waste so much time. I just had to do things, right? I'm confident, I've lived, I know. So now I look at curiosity as not just a way to help me understand the business, the people, the decision making, also the historical context of the business and how we got to where we are. But it also gives me insight into the people that I'm trying to lead. How do you inspire them, engage them, develop them? What pieces of their decision trees or critical thinking, what foundational opportunities do you have to meet them where they're at and build them up and help them understand the way you think and the way that you approach your business or the areas that you're managing? I think it comes down to, most importantly, as a leader, I know how I want to make people feel. And I'm sure all of you do too, whether you're leading people in your personal life or in your careers. And that was, for me, very different than I saw the leaders at my business leading almost 20 years ago. It was relatively aggressive. It was just do what I say. I don't need to explain myself. If you're not doing it, I'm going to yell about it. And I knew I had to change that. But I also knew that to change it, you can't just walk up to those people and say, I have a better way of doing this. Or, I don't think you should speak to someone that way. So I had to kind of come up with how I was going to do that organically. So here's where my story comes in, and I'll try and make this as brief as possible. But the first person who reported to me in this role, well, not the role I'm in now, but my initial role, was a woman who was old enough to be my mom, older than my mom, had worked at the company for debatably longer than I had been alive. She previously had been managing the sales side of a business that we bought in the northern part of the state. And after we bought that company, the men who ran sales moved her immediately into a sales training role and put someone else in the sales management role. And then she became my employee to manage our training program. And so I was like, oh, I can do this. So we had these huge manuals, and my degree is in journalism, which really helped me in this, but also didn't help me. So anyway, so it was awkward. It was awkward for her, it was awkward for me. She had developed this thing that she was really proud of. But it was like 300-page manuals in all classroom training, and it was just kind of like, who's reading these things? So I redlined all the manuals. I came up with how I thought that this should go and started presenting it to her every time we met. She was so passionate about the business and her job. She was receptive and grateful and loved it, but couldn't get there on her own. Everything she turned into me, it was like red pen everywhere. And I was like, what is going on here? Her performance issues were me. I didn't lead with curiosity. I wasn't asking the right questions. I wasn't bringing her along for the ride. I was telling her what I thought that she should do. And whether what she should be doing was right or wrong, she had no agency to come up with it herself. I didn't show her or tell her why. So after a year or so of doing this very unsuccessfully, I realized, oh, curiosity, what a crazy word. Lead with curiosity. So I started asking questions. When you started in sales, what was your day like? What things did you want to learn on the job that you weren't taught? What does success look like to you? And through a number of questions and allowing her to answer them, we were able to get to the end point together. And it became much easier for her to have not only agency, but pride in the work that she did. It was easier for her to get people within the company on board to her programs and her training. She became truly engaged and excited. And I realized that just by doing this organically with her and hopefully others within the organization, it's not going to, sorry to the couple men in the room, it's not just going to the old guys and saying, this is how you need to do this. It's just one by one being patient and curious and leading by example, and the success comes. And that's what moves the mark.
Thank you, Lacey, for that story. Really tangible, a great way to highlight that. So I think what I'm hearing is that all of you, your leadership style, you're really leaning into what I would call human-centric leadership skills. Some people call them soft skills. I actually call them essential skills, because at the end of the day, it's about making genuine connection with people so you can create the environment for people to really rise to the level of their potential. And there's, what I'm hearing from all of you, there's not any one way to do that. You're all leaning into that a little bit differently, from positive intent to empathy and curiosity. So I like that as like a theme, but I actually now want to drive a little bit deeper, because I think it's like, how do you actually implement that? So Sarah, the question I have for you, since you talked a lot about empathy, like how do you balance leading with empathy without coming across as maybe soft or even a pushover or being taken advantage of? And how do we be kind and gentle, but also effective and firm in our approach? Practically speaking, how do you strike the balance? And maybe you don't strike the balance, and what does that look like?
That's a tough question, and there are lots of different ways to answer and approach it. And I think I really love, Beth, your summary of calling it human-centric leadership, because all of these words and these keywords and these values have a very common thread between them. So as I said in the beginning, it's really important to me that I clarify that being empathetic is not a synonym with being a pushover. I think that empathy is developed by having lived your own life and having had so much life experience that you really can put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand what it's like with whatever chaos that they are dealing with in their personal lives at that moment. I believe so deeply in the idea that you have no idea what is going on behind closed doors. Oh, look at Sarah. Oh, she's got this big job, and she has 4 kids, and she must just have it all. Please, you guys, you have no idea what is going on behind closed doors, and nor would you, and that's totally fine. But I wanted my staff and the people who I was in charge of developing and bringing on board to understand that whatever they were dealing with, I have probably done it. And what I mean by that is not a superiority, it's more of a relational, listen, I got you, and I know for sure that you don't want your work product to suffer. To Lori's point, no one's coming in, we're not hiring people who are coming in to fail. We are hiring people who are coming in to achieve and feel really proud about their work. I want you to come in, I want you to feel proud about your work, and then by the way, I want you to go home and do what, I have carpools to run and dinner to get on the table. Like, I got things to do, and I'm assuming that you do too. So by leading with empathy, it gives me a chance to be understanding and create a space for the employee where they know that they can come in, do their best work, and then live the rest of their life however they need to do it. And if that means that they need a break or a pause or a sabbatical or, oh my God, I gotta leave, I just got a call from school that, someone has the barfies, like, bye, see you later, because the trust is there.
Yeah.
Because the trust is there, that also means that when I see a performance issue that needs to be addressed, that person knows I am not approaching it with defensiveness. I am not approaching it in an adversarial or condemning nature. I am coming to you and saying, why don't you tell me what's actually going on, because you are not an underperformer, and I'm seeing this trend, or this is what's happening, or here's my observation about either a work product that you're putting out, a relationship that I'm seeing between you and a colleague that is not going the way that my spidey senses are tingling here. And it allows me to come to that employee or that team member in a space of safety. You are in a space of emotional safety when you are with me, because I'm leading through empathy.
Yeah.
And let me be really clear here. Like, a core memory for me, the first time that I was called a hard ass to my face was when I was 24 years old. And I remember it now, and it was a minute ago, because I don't take that kind of, no, I am a hard driving, high achieving, really unrealistically high expectations of people kind of leader. But that doesn't mean that I'm a taskmaster, or that I have the expectations that people can do this in an unsupported fashion. I have expectations that people can be great because I have the expectation of myself to provide every tool, every opportunity, and every safe emotional space for you to do so. Come in every morning, kick butt, and go home. You have other things to do, so do I. Let's do it. Thank you, Laura.
Yes, snap to that.
Beth,
It's almost like...
Can I add on to that as well? So I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Sarah said. And I would also add, it's interesting, we talk about Wisconsin nice, right? And I would extend that to I think it passes across every generation, but there's also sort of this millennial nice or Gen Z nice, like, oh, you know what, it's fine, I'll just let it go. So we've adopted in our office as well, because part of both being an empathetic leader, but also not being steamrolled, is we've adopted this Brene Brown concept of as clear as kind. It is kind. It is kinder to be honest and upfront and clear with someone about if they missed the mark, if they did it this way and they should have done it that way. If you're an empathetic leader, they know you're giving them that feedback because you want them to succeed, not because you want them to fail. But not giving them that feedback is unkind, right? It's setting them up for failure. So we've really set the stage and set the feedback. You talk about red lines. We say this all the time too. Don't fear. If we're giving you red lines, it's because we want to make you better, not because we're being critical of your work, right? So clear as kind has been sort of an adoption among our team as well. That's really helped to make sure that, again, no one's getting steamrolled. People feel comfortable offering feedback, even if it's constructive, and we can all move forward in a positive way.
And that is a learned trait, and that's why we are leaders, is because we have done the work to take the deep breath and have that hard conversation, even though we don't want to have that conversation. I mean, you have to practice that. But that's why you're a leader, is because you have practiced that, and now you know how to approach it in a safe way and be clear and understand that it is not with defensiveness, it's not with accusations. You're saying, this is what else is up. Tell me what's going on here, because I care about you. I want to know. We all care about this work product. We're coming at it as a unified front. This is not you versus me. This is us all together working as a team and ultimately changing our business.
So part of being effective in terms of making those human connections is that you also have to be adaptable in your style, right? So Lori, I did want to ask a question about Gen Z, and you brought it up, so I'm just going to go there. And I want to know, how do you adapt your style to the Gen Z stare? Has anybody been following that on and I've got 3 of them at home, and yeah, that stare is deadly. You're talking to them, and they are just looking at you like you're not, they're looking through you. So I know you've got a lot of early career professionals, and so positive intent, empathy. Have you had to adapt that for a different generation? And then also, what are you learning from that younger generation that you're sort of weaving into your own effective leadership style?
And I will say this now as well, we are so diverse from an age perspective. We cover the gamut. We've got about 50 people, but we cover the gamut from old Xers, I'll say, all the way down to Gen Z. So we cover at least, was that 4 generations? So to your point, Beth, you need to lead differently, to reach members of all of these different generations. But I think what has been key in our learning is that trust is a currency that's understood by every generation, right? It comes across a little differently with the different generations, but this idea of trust really is sort of universal. A number of years ago, we did a cultural canvas exercise to really put on paper, define what is the culture of our company. And though the term came out in one that's probably a little more relatable to millennials or Gen Zs, but what emerged as one of our key cultural values is this value of psychological safety. So we found that was a term that really resonated with millennials, with Gen Xers, and we have found that, again, it is a space where people feel very comfortable to be themselves. They know they can bring their whole selves to work. We have active mental health conversations, right? And people feel like there's a safe space. They know there's not going to be punitive action, for example, if they say, I need a day, this thing happened, right? Again, it's sort of cultivating the empathetic leadership. But it has been really, really interesting, again, to look at trust as the through line there between generations, because, again, cultivating trust with someone who's, of the boomer generation or an older Gen Xer is very different. I think a lot of people of different generations, they see psychological safety. Oh, that's the ooey gooey. That's that stuff for the young kids, right? Like everybody's soft nowadays. People are too soft. But it's interesting, right? So how do you translate this principle of trust to someone of a different generation? Well, that might mean just showing up for them in a different way. A number of years ago, we had a team member who's, again, a little on the older side, generally keeps to himself, but his dad passed away. And a number of us just showed up at his dad's funeral. And it was like we understood that was meaningful to him, and we knew what was going on in his life. So we didn't exchange a whole lot of words about it, but we just showed up in a way that made him know that we know what's going on, and we care about you, not just when you're in the office, but when you're out of the office, and we're just going to show up for you.
Yeah, and people remember that, right? Just like how we showed up for people during COVID, even if they didn't agree with all the policies and everything like that, they remember how you made them feel, and if you were invested them as humans. And I think we're realizing that really paid a lot of dividends going forward. So Lacey, I'm going to pose one more question to you, then I'm going to open it up for the audience, and then do like a quick round across all of you to close this out. So my question for you is, and I hate to put you on the spot, so I'm deviating it a little bit from what we talked about, but I know you've got some good stories. So you talked about very early on gaining your confidence to lead differently. You really leaned into curiosity and being vulnerable in that way. I've been learning a lot about your industry. There's a lot of disruption in your industry. And so a lot of change, and I'm sure you're also thinking about how you're adapting your leadership style. Is there anything that is, you're recognizing that you might need to lead in a new way, and you're a little anxious and nervous, and how you want to have the courage to continue to evolve your leadership going forward?
Great question. And I think that the answer to that question is no different than how did I find the courage now or in the last few years, and how will I continue to do it? It's based in two things. One is just being part of a family business. I have this kind of internal pride and ownership, not in an owner's sense, but like it's my responsibility and duty, not only to my family, but to our employees, to make our business the best it can be in every sense of the word. So that I understand is something that being in family business may be different from a lot of you, but that's the core. But it's all based in authenticity. The more authentic I can be to myself and grow as a human being and be vulnerable and open and curious, all the words we've all used and the words that were used this morning, the more I can do that and lean into that and be true to myself, whatever disruption or next generation or challenge or whatever comes, I can enter that with the confidence of I can only be me. And I'm good enough to do what I'm doing, and I don't know everything. So I'm going to ask more questions, I'm going to learn more, I'm going to study the industry, I'm going to do whatever it takes to do what I need to do, but the core of that is by being my authentic self. And the confidence building piece comes from time, doing things wrong, doing things right, learning from others, being curious, being all the things, and also stepping away from your work, closing your computer, going on a vacation, or like what we call like doing the work, like the internal work on yourself, on your own heart and soul and brain, and whatever that means to you, whether it's going to therapy or going to a yoga class or walking your dog in the park, nobody can define that for you. But the more time throughout your career you can have empathy for yourself and really learn who you are and develop yourself into the best human being you can be, you can take on whatever challenge comes your way, personally or in your business.
What I'm kind of excited about hearing from all of you and sort of where we are in these wild, wacky times is that we're really leaning into these timeless truths around our fundamental human needs. And instead of pushing them to the side and saying, there's a work me and a home me and these are separate, you are really talking about giving ourselves permission to be authentic, which is it's timeless, but I think giving ourselves permission is like the most disruptive modern thing that we can do. So I'm really excited to hear your stories and to know that we're leaning into a new way to lead, because how we've been doing in the past might have worked for some and worked in some situations, but I definitely think that we have to evolve and think about how we're going to move forward. So with that, is that okay? I think we end at 11:05. Is that right? So maybe a couple of questions, if anybody has any, and then we'll wrap up with some closing words of wisdom from our panelists. Yes?
So going back to the Gen Z thing.
And should we use the mic? Is that okay? Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to do this because I have permission. Nobody gave it to me, but I'm going to do this.
Oh, well, wonderful. Hi. Going back to the Gen Z thing. So yes, empathy, yes, understanding, yes, emotional safety and mental health awareness. Agree with all of that. And how do you get them to notice details? Has anybody figured that out? Or a training? Or I have teenagers I'm trying to do it to. One's got it, one doesn't. I'm parenting them fairly similarly. Any breakthroughs on that?
Man, we'll have a parenting clinic next, because if anyone has all of these answers, I am in for it. Sometimes I think it's adapting to individual styles. And just a quick anecdote as well. I mean, some of my Gen Z employees, I had a young woman get a parking ticket a couple of years ago for very clearly parking in a no parking zone. And then she literally came up and was like, do you think I could expense this to the company? And I was like, I wouldn't let my 13-year-old daughter expense this to the company. Like, it was very clear. No, there are consequences, right? So maybe that counts as detail orientation. But I think, again, we go back to clear as kind. If you missed the details, here are the details we need you to notice, right? And here's why, and let's make sure that we work. Sometimes it just is quite simply just, you have to be really iterative about it. These are the things we need you to notice. Here's why we need you to notice them. Do it over and over and over again. And in our company, we do sort of our promotion system is really based on, it's not based on is that position open, but it's based on have you mastered your skill set that applies to you at your job or at your level. So for some people, it's sort of like, okay, I got to keep working on this because without it, I'm not going to be promoted to the next level. So kind of a cause and effect relationship around that as well.
I'll add one thing that gives me empathy working with not just Gen Zers, but sometimes people do things and you're aghast. You're like, how, why? But specifically with the Gen Zers, I've got 3 of them at home, and they actually do remind me, Mom, I've never done this before. And then I have to be like, okay, so yeah, be clear and show them, and hopefully they pick it up. But I'm like ancient, and so it's like I've done everything. But then my kids have to remind me, I've actually never done this before. And it's like, oh, okay. It helps me channel a little bit of empathy. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. If you have someone, or when you have someone that is going through something challenging and they trust you enough to be transparent about that, but within reason, and you don't want to pry, how do you lead them with empathy while still holding them accountable despite the hard time that they're going through?
It's a really good question. Boundary, and I get this a lot from leaders, like, how do I support mental health and be empathetic, but without being a therapist and getting all in somebody's business? So, yeah.
I'll scoop that one first. Thank you for that question. So I think there are layers to this, and there are definitely degrees that you need to approach it. So if it's something that you think that they've confided in you, you appreciate that you have that trusting relationship, if they have a clear idea of what that space means for them, what will serve them, you need to decide as the manager, does that suit the business that you're running right now? Does it suit your department? Is there anyone else that you can bring in to pick up some slack? Is it something that's going to take a week or 2 weeks, or will it be longer than that? Once you've sort of reached that threshold, if it's pretty clear to you that something is going to suffer professionally, it's time for you to bring in reinforcements. Turn to an HR colleague or a different person in leadership. Find out, are there resources that your company offers that can help support this person in a different way? How are you going to approach it, both to support them, but also to maintain the integrity of the business that you are running? And just appreciate that there is not a single universal answer to any of this, and that their own situation could change, right? Like maybe they have a health issue that starts off as a little something, but over time snowballs into a big something, right? So they are dealing with this chaos in their own life, and you need to be respectful of that as an empathetic leader, while also maintaining the performance of your overall team. So it's a lot of communication with them, never asking them to, of course, share their personal things with people that they're not comfortable with, but going to them, hey, you know what, I think it's time for me to take this to our HR leader. I would really like you to join me for that conversation. Is that something you're comfortable with? I want to make sure you have all the resources you need, but it's also my responsibility to make sure I'm managing this business. And just having the dialogue that is open, clear, about how you're going to serve everyone, because you can, and knowing for you that there's not a one-size-fits-all, and that even if you have a plan, be ready for that to change and be comfortable with that.
Just to add to that, a couple of real specific things as well. I know we always tell people, completely understand that there are things you're going through right now. What we ask of you, though, is to be really honest with us about what you can't do. I'm going to miss a deadline. I can't finish that project. I need some time off. And we try to be really understanding about that, and then we can shift work around so they have the time and space to handle their situation. But that's sort of our trade-off is we give you the time and space and understanding to deal with your situation, but the trade-off is we ask you for that upfront candor of what in your work life will suffer, so we can shift that, and then none of the balls are getting dropped.
All right, thank you. I want to be respectful of time, so I'm going to ask one final question, sort of rapid fire, 30 seconds each, ladies, to leave you with some food for thought, and then if we have more time, I'm sure we can all hang around a little bit and can ask some individual questions. But just to kind of like wrap up everything that we've been talking about, Lacey, we'll start with you and go down the line. A message or words of encouragement that you'd offer to others in this room, who are thinking about redefining their own leadership or the courage to lead with more authenticity, especially individuals who are maybe earlier in their journey and they're not the big boss. What would you say?
That you don't have all the answers, and you won't ever have all the answers, and that's an opportunity. lead people where you want them to go by bringing them along with you. That's cheesy to say, but I think it all the time. Be the change you want to see in the world. You can be the change you want to see in your business or your company or for your department or for the couple people that work with you or work for you. Put the work in for yourself, on yourself, and bring those next to you along for the ride. Highlight them. Put them, show them the way to be successful, and a rising tide raises all ships. I'm just full of them today.
I know. And it's so funny, like sometimes we dismiss these old adages, but they're adages for a reason. They are actually timeless and meaningful, but because we keep hearing them, we dismiss it. But I agree with you. Lean into those things that are tried and true. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say start with the foundation of a strong moral compass. I mean, I know we have all had times in our career where we see someone else doing it differently and maybe less ethically, but they seem to be winning when we feel like we're doing it the right way and we seem to be not winning. I firmly believe that the strong moral compass, sticking to the high road, you will rise to the top eventually. Like nice guys finish first. I'm going to throw that one in there too. Yeah, good guys finish first. So follow strong moral compass. The other piece that has stuck with me, because I think this was sort of part of my journey and what the founder of our company said, I always noticed this about you and I really liked it, and that's why he empowered me, but he described my style as proceed until apprehended. So when he saw something, or I saw something in the company that needed to be done, reviews weren't being done on time, or there was a vacuum of leadership in some area, I would just do it. I would just step in and do it. And he would let me do it up until he felt like maybe, well, we got to go to a different direction, but proceed until apprehended.
Love that. Should be a t-shirt. Sarah, bring us home.
I think, Beth, you and Lacey both sort of encompass this of like the personal work, putting in the personal work. I have had such a tremendous exposure to that and appreciation for that now. I used to think that my professional self and my personal self could be two people. Friends, they cannot. They are one. And so when you put the work in for yourself, whether it's whatever your version is, you take the walk or you journal or you have a therapist or whatever, you bring that into all facets of your life. And once you learn how to be compassionate to yourself and to others, it's a game changer. It is a game changer because you don't approach things with defensiveness anymore, and you're not adversarial. You come at it just from a very holistic perspective. People feel that at all ages, all generations, all levels, and it's kind of the secret sauce. It's like Tinkerbell's little magic dust. It's being aware, putting in the work for yourself, because then you show up as a 360 person in whatever arena of your life you're in.
I love it. I think my key takeaway is if you really want to drive for high performance, invest in yourself and people as people who are doing the work, and the performance will come. I want to thank each of you. Love the conversation. Thank you all for being here, for your questions. And again, we'll wrap it up.
Thank you,
If you have any
Beth.
other questions, please join us up here.